Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ANON Summit 2020. My name is Shiva Rahramani. I'm the co-founder of Sigmo, and I have the honor to act as the moderator of ANON Summit for the next 2 days. I'm very thrilled to share with you that more than 8,000 registrations from almost 130 countries, literally from all around the world, have taken place. And I'm talking to people from everywhere. A very warm welcome to everyone. I hope that you have a coffee or tea ready for the next few hours because we are going to have plenty of interesting panel discussions and brilliant talks and so much more to offer to you. Obviously, I will walk you through some logistics of the panel and the platform, but before we do that, I would like to also welcome the hosts of the ANON Summit, Daniel Lenikus and Michael Beckes here. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
How are you? Excited?
I'm very excited. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Very thrilled to be here. So we are in a very beautiful location. Does it look familiar to you?
It does. Actually, it's a nostalgic moment being back here in the Gösterhalle, the venue where Daniel and I hold the opening keynote for ANON 2019. I'm just so grateful that the whole team is working full-time on the project again. I think over 30 people are here today, making this scenery what it is today. And as I said, a lot of good memories here.
I believe. And Daniel, good morning to you too.
Good morning.
So maybe you could tell us a little about your whole experience from organizing the event to then having to postpone it and then finally deciding that you want to fully have it online. I'm sure it was challenging and exciting at the same time, right?
It definitely was a roller coaster ride. I mean, it all started, of course, with Corona pandemic back then in March and April, and we have been seeing so many of our competitors cancel, and we were in a not so nice position because we had the choice to postpone it as well or to gamble, because we didn't know back then if the Austrian government will impose a ban on events or not. But then we decided to postpone to October, and we quickly realized with the whole situation evolving that it's very unlikely to have a successful event in October. Mm-hmm. So we said, what can we do? And then a good friend on Yavin, who unfortunately can't be here, but I'm sure he's watching right now, approached me and said, "Hey Daniel, why don't you do an online event?" And then I said, "Sure, let's do it. Partner up." So we partnered with Cointelligence, which is now a co-organizer as well. And then it was up to October, or we do it right now. And then we said, okay, we have 1 month, let's go, let's do it. Suddenly everybody had to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week from basically doing nothing. And it was crazy, but it was a good choice, I believe, because as we see, we have over 8,000 people attending. And yeah, I think we did the right decision, and we're very happy that everything is now taking place and everything is professional, and we are very excited.
Thank you. And Michael, on to you again. So maybe you could tell me the highlights that you are looking forward to the most during the next 2 days.
That's a hard question, actually. So I think my personal highlight would be the feature to network with the participants of the event. As you said, over 130 countries are participating in ANON 2020, which is insane in my opinion. It's just amazing. And after our little chat, I will go straight to my laptop and network with as many people as possible. But in terms of the agenda, I think everything is exciting, but my personal highlight is the speech from Andreas Antonopoulos, just because I'm following him for years and he's one of the main guys that brought me into the space. But also tomorrow, I think the NFT topic excites me very, very much, just because it's relatively new to me and I think it has a lot of potential. But as I said, it's a hard question. I don't know. Daniel, what do you say?
Tough question, definitely. And fortunately, a lot of our partners decided to announce stuff here at the ANON Summit. And for example, Raiffeisen Bank will be talking in public for the first time about their new project called RBI Coin, which I'm really looking forward today. Then we have also one of our main partners, Electroneum, gearing up for a major announcement. It will be a great surprise. And we have a surprise Fireside Chat, which still is a surprise. So stay tuned. It will start at 3 p.m. today, I guess. And tomorrow we have the Austrian Post announcing their CryptoStamp 2.0 with amazing new features. So it's like the full agenda it's a great experience. As I said, we have announcements, we have panels, we have surprise Fireside Chats, and we have the networking, and of course, like also my personal highlight is definitely also the keynote, closing keynote of Antonopoulos tonight. Right after us, we have the Austrian government announcing news about their blockchain strategy that's coming in place. So this is also great because a lot of people don't have Austria on their map when it comes to blockchain, but we're definitely very upfront, and I think it's important to showcase this to people, and it's even greater that we now have 8,000 people registered that will now get the message. And yeah, I think for me the whole event is a highlight, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Michael. Before we get down to business and start with the first speaker of the day, I want to point out a few features of the platform that you will be using. I need to also point out that the organizers of this event did their best from the very beginning to create a very lifelike event. That's why we have plenty of features for you, and I'll quickly walk you through some of them. So on the right side of your screen, you will see the chat area, which quiet is busy already. That's nice. If you have any questions throughout the day, you can ask them here. You can post comments. You can basically start interesting discussions. And the chat moderators will do their best to respond to your questions as fast as possible. Obviously, you have seen the guidelines and the rules that have been sent out to you last week. I just quickly mention one more time that this chat area is here to be used as a platform for exchanging information. So please, let's keep it that way and no spamming. If you violate the chat area rules after a few times of notice, you will have to be removed from the whole event. So let's keep it that way. Also on the left side of your screen, you will see what we will call a floor plan, like a live event. You have the networking area, you have the sessions area and the expo area. Make sure to browse through the whole area throughout the day, but especially from 1 to 3 p.m. and that's when the break on the main stage is happening. So even though there is a break on the main stage, you can still check out the expo area and the sessions area for more insight. All right. Jump right in. I wish to also say that we don't only have international experts with us today and tomorrow, but we also have high-level political representation. I would therefore like to give a very warm welcome to the Austrian Federal Minister for the EU and the Constitution in the Austrian Chancellery, Caroline Edelstadler, who will be delivering the keynote speech. A very warm welcome and good morning to you, Minister Edelstadler.
Good morning and thank you so much. It is really a big pleasure for me speaking here today at your summit. Under other circumstances, it would have been my pleasure to welcome you all here in Vienna. You are definitely meeting in special times. Well, this year, we are meeting online, and that also shows how our lives, our businesses, our working methods were affected by the COVID-19 crisis. But it shows also how flexible we are, how quickly we adopted to this situation, and I can also congratulate you to this summit. How to react now, how to adopt our lives, that was also the question from the first day of the COVID-19 crisis. And of course, it is a really big challenge for all of us, for our businesses, for our working methods, for our lives. We had to accept that challenge. And luckily in Austria, we acted quickly and we set very strict restrictions from the first moment. And so far, we were successful. That is why we, as one of the first members of the European Union, were also in a position to lift some of these restrictions, to take back some of these very strict measures? Well, for that, life is going on under other normalities, under somehow a new normality, but shops are reopened since more than a month. Pupils are back to school since last week. Shops and restaurants are open since last Friday. And at the end of May, also the hotels will reopen. However, we have to stay cautiously, we have to act diligently, and we have to cooperate strongly with our neighboring countries, with the regions surrounding Austria. And we are also ready to press pause if we see a fallback in the infection rates, in the numbers of infected people. Keeping people aware and on our side. That's the most crucial and most important thing at the moment. So far, people in Austria are really committed and the curve flattened, and so that is also something which I would consider as a big success of these strict restrictions. Now, it is the time to return to normality, to something like a new normality. And conferences like this seem to be part of this new normality. Now, it is the time to prepare also for the future. It is crucial now to draw the learnings and to take the chances and the changes out of this crisis. We also have to talk about economy. I would say it is the most serious damage, the most serious effectiveness of economies worldwide since the 1930s. GDP decrease is higher than ever since the 1930s. IMF's forecasts draw a dark picture. We have to face reality. 7.5% decline in the Eurozone, about 7% decline also in Austria, and employment raised a lot. Since the shutdown in March in Austria, the increase of unemployed people was by 300,000 people. That's why the Austrian government set support measures. They were adopted quite quickly after the starting of the crisis and worth than 38 billion euros, equivalent, and I want to mention that, of 10% of the Austrian GDP. In addition to that, also the European Union set measures, and the heads of state and government agreed to a 540 billion euro stimulus package within the European Union. By challenges we are facing at the moment, money can't solve all of them. In the contrary, it is very important to draw the right lessons now, because the weakness of Europe was also exposed in this situation. When it comes to the health crisis, we have to say it clearly that Europe was not prepared for a pandemic of that scale. We realized that many things we needed most in this health crisis were no longer produced in Europe. For example, medication, ventilators, or other things like masks. This is only one example. And I would like to add also that instead of showing our strength in Europe, for example, by joint procurement, every state acted on its own, and every state had to act on its own to overcome this crisis. Well, I'm not a pessimist, but I think we really have to say it clearly that we have to learn out of this crisis. And more of this weakness will be exposed when it comes to the economic crisis in Europe. In the recent years, the European Union had problems with keeping up with the global players like China or also the US. And that's what we have to change now. And now also the optimist in me comes through. It is crucial, and it is a historical moment now to overcome the weakness of Europe, to overcome the weakness which was exposed and expressed by this crisis. We have to strengthen our power, which we have if we are acting swiftly, if we are acting together. It is the time now to complete the common market. It is the time now to establish Europe as a hub of innovation, as a hub of technology, and as a champion in the fight against the climate change. It is how we have to do that, and it is now very crucial to start a discussion how we can tackle this crisis, how we can create a European Union who is ready, who is fit to challenge and to face challenges like this. The Austrian government and I, as a Minister of Europe, we are urging our European partners to start this process of the Conference of Europe, to start this process of an in-depth discussion of further strengthens and of how to strengthen the European Union now. It is the time now to roll our sleeves up and to work on that hard. And when it comes to blockchain, I really want to reiterate that it is a success we should establish here in Europe. Success will, however, also depend on the engagement of private sector as well as individuals like all of you. It is therefore great to see what is happening today. Blockchain is a perfect example of a technology which we need in Europe and where we should play a global leading role in that regard. This requires two things. It requires that we are creating the necessary environments here in Europe, and secondly, it is needed to bringing the best and smartest people in the field of blockchain to Europe and to Austria. I therefore commend the people behind the ANON Blockchain Summit 2020 for putting together such an incredible event. Austria is certainly committed to creating the necessary environment in order to use the great potential in the application scenarios for blockchain technology presented here today. We want to set standards for digital management services, for digital security, for digital identity, for the digital currency, and also for digital cooperation. In addition, we are committed to uniform regulation in the European Union, to closely follow now the developments, the dialogue in blockchain scenes, and also bringing together politicians, decision makers, and potential users. You as the business guys, you as the experts. In addition, we would like to strengthen applied research in this field of technology. We can be so much stronger. I'm convinced of that if we are acting together, if we are acting smart and swiftly. And that's where you are really experts in this field. We need you as politicians to guide us also the way, and we are committed to help you in that field. As I said in the beginning, these are certainly challenging times, and it would be so much nicer to welcome you in Vienna in person. But I'm convinced that we will be able to do that in the future. We here in Austria certainly want to make use of the opportunity this challenge and this crisis shows us and gives us. And I'm convinced that we can become much more stronger than we were in the past if we're working together. Please keep that spirit. That's really the spirit we need. And for this conference, for this summit, I wish you the greatest success. I hope to see you soon in Vienna in person. And well, all the best for you. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Minister. This was very insightful. Today we have two great tracks on the agenda, and tomorrow we will have two more. The first track of the day is Banking and Finance from 10:30 to 1 p.m. and the second one is Open Finance and Decentralized Finance from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., of course, Vienna time. We will start the day right off with the topic where it all started over 10 years ago, banking and finance. So, welcome back, everyone. Let me quickly also one more time point out the session area is the area that you will be using for networking. So maybe you have read the guidelines, but I'm repeating them here again. You have about 10 minutes. You will be connected to a random person. You have about 10 minutes to basically present yourselves and network with them. Of course, you have the possibility to do it through your through a video chat. So make sure that your camera is on and the background is pleasant. I'm very excited to also see that the chat area is very, very busy already. Make sure that you also check out our expo area. Some of the speakers that you will hear from today and tomorrow will also be present in their booth. You can browse through the booth the whole day, but especially we recommend that you do that between 1 to 3 p.m., both today and tomorrow, because that's when the break on the main stage is happening. So shall we start with the first track of the day? Cutting the middleman, making money and payments available to everyone in a secure and transparent and decentralized way. The initial vision and idea behind Bitcoin has been the reason for the overall development of this Bitcoin industry that we've been observing for the past few years. Today, we have reached a point where more and more traditional players are coming to space. From global payment service providers to banks and even central banks, almost everybody is involved now. Let's hear what they've got to say. We start the day with a fireside chat with Ido Sadeh Man, who is the founder and chairman of the board from Saga Monetary Technologies, and Yavin, who is the founder and CEO of Cointelligence, excuse me, and co-host of the ANON Summit 2020. We have Daniel here with us again. Daniel, hi again.
Hey.
So, are you excited about the first track? Can you elaborate on the first track and what it has to say?
Definitely, I'm very excited about the first track. Let me tell you a little bit what we thought about structuring the agenda in total. So the first track will be about banking and finance, and the second track will be more about open finance and decentralized finance. What I had in mind is we start today with a little bit more of the traditional use cases of blockchain. As you already mentioned, it all started with banking and finance, and creating a new world of financial freedom for everybody. But it seems that more and more traditional players are entering the space as well. As we're seeing it now, we will have a speech from Raiffeisen Bank, we will have a speech from a big telecom industry, which are also working in payments. So we see that more and more of the people that were actually meant to be cut out, the middlemen, the trusted third parties, they are also now entering the space. They want a piece of the cake. So let's hear what they've got to say. Let's give them a chance to explain their reasoning, their decision making. And then on the second part of the day, we will be hearing a lot more about decentralized and open finance, about the true innovation that comes with blockchain. We will have people talking about decentralized lending, peer-to-peer lending. We will have people talking about staking. We will have a panel about alternative investments during COVID-19. Are alternative investments seeing more and more traction because of a pandemic? So, yeah, this is the first day that we are now looking forward to. As I mentioned, tradition in the morning, innovation in the evening, or in the second part of the day. And yeah, let's see what's going on and what speeches and what the participants also think about it. So we invite everyone to share their opinions as well in the chat. Let us hear what you think. Also tell me if you think that it makes sense what I told you. Do you think the agenda makes sense in that way? I'm really looking forward to your opinion. And yeah, back to you now.
So what do you expect from the tracks on day 2?
Day 2 starts with tokenization. And tokenization is a topic that I'm personally very interested in because my family has a real estate background and there's a big hype about real estate tokenization. People were talking in 2019 only about tokenization of everything. But the topic is falling far behind their expectations because the regulatory hurdles are just too big. I mean, nobody, like it was, regulation was here, tokenization was here, and it was supposed that they meet in the middle, but it seems that regulation is not moving. So tokenization is really stuck at the moment. But we have also the more innovative part of tokenization. It's a little bit like the finance part. We have the traditional finance and we have the more innovative finance use cases. In tokenization, it's the same. We have digital assets, tokenization of bonds, stocks, real estate, and we have tokenization of digital items, of collectibles, which is called, generally non-fungible tokens, the NFT space. And the NFT space is, in my opinion, the hottest topic in blockchain right now. A lot of companies are trying it out. As you see, the Austrian Post is trying it. I read an article about that Lamborghini is now also issuing NFTs. We have big wineries issuing NFTs. We have Nike having patents on crypto kicks. So a lot of good stuff is happening there. And this is also a funny part because blockchain was meant to be very innovation driven, and now we already see more traditional use cases and very innovative use cases. So on the first part of the second day, we will start with the, again, traditional part on tokenization, and then move more and more into the really innovative part on tokenization, on NFTs in gaming, NFTs in collectible art and everywhere. And we have very, very great lineup of speakers in the NFT space and on the NFT panel. And for the second part of the second day, to not get confused, we will be talking a little bit more about blockchain and crypto in general. It will be more open discussions. We have a great panel on trading on market volatility, and I think volatility is volatility in crypto is a different volatility than everywhere else, and people are quite used to 10%, 15% jumps per day sometimes. And it's going to be great to hear the panel talk about their different strategies there.
Right.
We have a great panel with Matti Greenspan, Ton Weiss, Leah Wald, and Anatoly Kniatsev. So I think it will be a very knowledgeable panel, and you will be able to learn a lot. And yeah, that's basically the whole agenda. And yeah, Michael and I already talked about our favorites, and for me it's hard to tell. I'm really excited because we will what I wanted to basically showcase in the agenda is that blockchain already has its traditional and very innovative use cases, even in the same small niche and topics. So this is my explanation and my idea behind the agenda. Do you have any other questions?
Daniel, thank you very much for that. I think we can slowly get back to our fireside chat. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So Ido and On are going to be talking about the money involved. Who should issue it? How can we deal with its volatility? And what can we learn from COVID-19 crisis and its impact on the global economy? We have Ido and On here with us. On, hello and good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Thank
to see you here.
Warm welcome, Shiva, and
Yeah,
I'm very excited to be here today. To start off, I'd like to say thank you for everyone for joining us today, and I'd also like to thank my partners at ANON Summit, Daniel and Michael. It's been a great pleasure working with them towards ANON Summit, and I'm very excited about this specific fireside chat with Ido from Saga because for me, blockchain and cryptocurrency is all about trust, transparency, and we are trying to change the world. We are trying to make the world a better place, and we are doing it with advancement and progress at many of the different industries, including the financial industry, obviously. I will add to that, I would like to add to that as a part of my personal mission and my company's mission, Cointelligence, for mass education and mass adoption, I'm so excited to see that we've had so many people registered to the event today. We've had almost 8,500 people registered so far. And I can see that we got about 1,000 people connected with us already now, which is so exciting for me. Not because it's great for me to see so many people connected to our event, but also because it shows that there is huge interest in blockchain and cryptocurrency. And for me, it's mostly important. Now, I'd like to welcome and introduce Ido from Saga, which is a project that I personally like, and I'm happy to allow Ido to share his thoughts and vision and so on. But before we get into that, I'd like to give Ido the stage to introduce himself and say a few words before we start. Hi, Ido.
Hello, On, and hello, everyone who's watching, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to participate in ANON this year, even if remotely. So my name is Ido Sadeh Man. I'm leading the Saga project, which we have founded a little shy of 3 years ago. And the vision behind Saga, and I'll remain very brief, is to create a global currency that is complementary to existing national currencies, under the presumption that, which I think is strengthened in the past few months, that we are a part of a global economy, side by side with the fact that we are part of each and every one of the national economies that we belong to, and that while national currencies, or fiat currencies as we call them, are designed to meet their national economies, we are lacking a global currency, a global store of value, and medium of exchange, and eventually even a unit of account to allow us to stay safe in the face of a global economy and global commerce. In order to do that, we've obviously taken quite a lot of inspiration from Bitcoin as the first non-governmental currency of the modern age. But we also analyzed several caveats that we aim to solve, one of which is being able to tame volatility on the way towards independence. And this is obviously quite an elaborate and complicated task to achieve, but we believe it is essential if we are to gain the feature of being able to serve as a medium of exchange and as a store of value. And yes, we're very happy to have launched December 19, quite late and quite recently. And this is partly due to the fact that we are and insisted on being compliant to the regulation. We're launched out of the UK and therefore comply with AML, KYC, and any other regulation enforced in the UK, which is a long process, but we believe is the right way to move forward.
Thank you for that. And I have to say that I completely agree with you. I'm a big fan of regulation for blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I think that the only way that we will see the industry growing and progressing in a good way is if we have the proper regulation for this amazing innovation and amazing industry. Now,
I'm afraid that if we keep agreeing, we'll have a dull fireside chat. So,
actually, while I was talking, I was thinking that usually I don't agree with many people on the fireside chats and panels, but I'm sure that we'll find something.
I'm sure we will
on the fireside chat today. We are going to talk a lot about the money problem, the money issue in the world, the way that I see it. And just as an introductory sentence or headline, I woke up today for a headline that says that Germany enters recession as over 100 banks charge negative interest rates. I think that most people in the world don't really don't want to realize that the financial system is actually broken. I mean, we've seen a financial crisis happening approximately every decade. We see the money printing that is happening, and it's like a complete chaos the way that I see it. And I'm not, and that leads me to the first question that I would like to ask you today, and that is, I know that Saga is geared towards becoming a global currency. And a global currency is something that is being talked a lot because of the COVID-19 crisis. What would you say to those who claim that globalization is dead after the COVID-19 crisis?
I would say that I think that if we have anything to learn from COVID-19, it is that globalization is here and it is here to stay. And while it comes with quite a lot of opportunities, it also comes with risk. And in COVID-19, we've seen the risk of trying to face in national constructs, in national power structures, a problem or a challenge that is not national. And I'm afraid that many of the challenges that you've mentioned are a part of the same thing, although the financial system is less visible, less obvious than a virus that keeps us at home. It is about the same thing. There are several challenges that we are trying to deal with, whether it's climate change. We're having a fireside chat as in May in Tel Aviv, we're experiencing the worst summer ever with 45 degrees. Whether it's the financial system or whether it's a global pandemic. I really think that globalization is far from vanishing simply because we are now constrained to our national states because of a crisis. I think that if at all, it is the proof of the contrary. We are confined, and however, we are here, 8,000 people on a digital using digital means to be on a conference, to be able to continue and interact, because this is a part of our life. The attack of supply chain, trying to get back from globalization to onshoring, is a reactionary measure to the fact that globalization brings challenges, and that some would wish to go back to a reality where people are not operating globally. But for us, for globalization to truly be dead, we need to stop communicating with each other in the intensity that we are now. And I think that, again, this conference is a good proof. We should stop traveling and we should stop shipping goods from one country and continent to the other. I don't think that any of that is about to happen. And therefore, there are challenges to globalization. The resolution of such challenges comes in deploying new systems and new tools to face it, not in trying to re-engineer a travel in time to a national reality. We're not going back there.
I'm sorry to say, but I agree with you.
That's becoming a habit.
What makes Saga and similar attempts to create a global currency a solution looking for a problem rather than a problem looking for a solution?
So, we were used to being accused of being a solution looking for a problem up until about 2 years ago, saying, well, we have perfectly functioning fiat currencies. They have been with us for quite some time. One can always exchange between the currencies at will. And so what is exactly the problem? So I'll answer by an example. If you're a UK citizen and you've underwent Brexit for the past 3 or 4 years, and you've seen the value of the pound dropping because of Brexit, well, when you purchase in your own national economy, you're actually fine. The British economy reacts to the same Brexiting decision. But when you go and you buy on Amazon, the prices there have very little consideration for Her Majesty's Parliament decisions. And therefore, you remain exposed, and you've seen your purchasing power drop by approximately 25%. And this is the reality. The reality is that prices all over the world are no longer constrained to being set by the government of the country we live in. I think that now it is even more consensual that the world needs a global currency. And it comes from two elements. One is that more and more personalities and office executives in the traditional world are claiming that it is necessary. We're seeing that central banks are very apprehensive from global currency attempts, and apprehension is usually a recognition in the need, because if they thought that it was not needed, they would not apprehend it. You see Christine Lagarde at her former position as the head of the IMF claiming that if the IMF and international bodies would not generate solutions, then the industry will. You see Mark Carney, who just stepped down from his office as the governor of the Bank of England, claiming that the dollar is probably no longer suitable to serve as a global currency, and that a synthetic basket, a digital currency, relying on a synthetic basket of currencies should probably replace it. And I think that this leads to the second point, which is that what we're seeing now is the United States printing several trillions of dollars to aid its economy facing the crisis. But these dollars that are printed are the reserve currency serving the entire world and not just the United States. And the rest of the world is not benefiting from this printout of money. This is clearly a signal that relying on a national currency, and this national currency can be very strong, powerful, and with us for a long time, but still the reality remains the dollar is being managed in the United States by the United States, whether reacting to fiscal policy or deploying monetary policy in favor of the US economy, which is a perfectly legitimate cause, but it can no longer serve alone as a global currency. It simply does not provide the security and the stability for citizens of other nations in the globe.
Yeah, I can say that I've heard many people are worried about what you just mentioned and about the percentage, the small percentage of the Americans compared to the rest of the world. And we all have to abide by the US dollar. And that leads me to my next question to you, which is something that I've noticed recently. And I don't see that many people are talking about it. According to what you've said, and I agree with that, we should be expecting hyperinflation and price growth, which hasn't happened so far. We also haven't seen the value of the US dollar plunging, and considering the huge printing being done, that doesn't make sense. Can you explain how you see this situation?
So it is indeed a very puzzling time, because on one hand, as you've mentioned, Germany is facing recession. There is a force that is a deflationary force. On the other hand, with massive money printouts, one could expect hyperinflation. I think it is really way too soon to tell. Markets are still fluctuating. There are many anomalies that are escorting this process. We're seeing the stock exchanges rise in several places in the world, while we are absolutely sure that the real economy, right, is still under shock, is still underperforming, and it doesn't make sense. So the first answer is that it is probably too soon to tell. The second answer is that this is a part of what's broken in the financial system. Currencies are measured against each other. And the dollar as the reserve currency is really the unit of account of the world. So there is a sort of inherent protection from the dollar value plunging, unless the countries that are using the dollar as a reserve currency start using other metrics. And we've seen some signs that this is happening, not only recently by COVID-19, but with the Chinese decision to maintain a renminbi petrodollars. I think that a lot of the CBDC run by central banks is geared towards looking at alternatives to the dollar as a reserve currency, in which case I think that we will go back to the basic, which is that when you print money, especially in such in such quantities, you're firstly indebting the generations to come, but secondly are running the risk of hyperinflation. I really don't think that it is safe to assume that this risk is behind us and that money printing can continue, or as the meme would have it, that the burr can continue without suffering the consequences.
Yeah, the burr, the new buzzword that we're
Yes.
seeing everywhere. Before I ask you the next question, I would like to mention to our audience that when I am finished with my questions for Ido, we will be accepting a few questions from the audience. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to start suggesting them now, and we will be choosing about 2 to 3 questions from the audience soon. So moving on to the next question, and to talk more specifically about the Saga operations, after we've discussed the general thoughts, our thoughts about the economy and money in general, can you please explain to us what is actually SDR?
Yeah, so if you'll allow me, I'll take a step back to the beginning of my introduction. So we wanted to introduce a contender to become a global currency, but it was clear to us that we needed to tame volatility. And the way we chose to do it is very similar to the way that central banks adopted decades ago, which is to start by fully relying on an asset that is already trusted, pegging, maintaining a reserve that would redeem the currency and therefore would create a floor and a ceiling to the price and tame volatility. It was clear to us, though, that we do not want to rely on a single currency. Exactly because of the reasons we've just mentioned, we don't want to be tied to the monetary and fiscal decisions of any single nation state. We looked for a sort of international average on the way to becoming global. And so a very natural choice was the SDR. The SDR is a basket of currencies that exists since 1969. It was developed by the IMF and is used ever since by central banks to hold their reserve when they don't want to be exposed to any single national currency. It is comprised out of the 5 most traded currencies in the world: US dollar, euro, yen, renminbi, and pound, in different weighings, obviously. And it gets updated if there is no urgent cause for updating the weighings. The weighings are updated every 5 years. And so relying on the SDR allowed us to do 2 things. One is to tame volatility of SGA vis-a-vis a global average of value and not a specific single market. On the other hand, it allows us to render accessible a currency that up until now was accessible only to central banks. The only ones that are allowed to hold SDR are central banks. And we cannot hold SDR, so we're obviously holding a replication of the currencies held in regulated banks. But what we're really giving is the ability to hold SDR through holding SGA, or through a replication of the SDR through holding SGA, which is extremely relevant in times like this, when no one knows how unstable currencies will continue to become, to be, or become even less stable than they are now. And in times of crisis, there is one principle that always wins, which is to diversify. The SDR is one option for such diversification, and the ability to offer it in extreme liquidity and ease encapsulated in one currency, we believe is helpful.
Thank you for explaining that. And what comes to my mind is something that I'm pretty sure that other people might think as well. And basically, according to everything that you're explaining, Saga sounds like a stablecoin. So can you explain to us if Saga is indeed a stablecoin?
So the short answer is no. The longer
we want the long answer.
The longer answer is that we're starting as a stablecoin. But if you look at the market, we have two main approaches, and I'm oversimplifying. One is the Bitcoin approach, saying fully independent, non-correlated to anything going on in national traditional financial markets. And the other approach is the stablecoin approach, saying, well, we need to be stable if we want to use those currencies. And the perfectly logical way to constantly remain stable is to peg an existing currency. So these are two approaches, and we see ourselves as a kind of bridge between the approaches. The claim is very simple. When the economy is small, when the Saga economy is small, it enjoys a very low trust and a very low network effect, and therefore, by design, it will be volatile. And so we are fully reliant on the SDR to stabilize the price of Saga. But it's a flexible supply of money model, meaning when someone buys Saga from the smart contract, Saga is created. When someone sells it back to the smart contract, Saga is being burned. And so the quantity of Sagas in the market is determined solely by the market. We cannot print money, which I believe is an important feature in any monetary model, especially in those days. What it allows us to do is to consider that the amount of circulating supply of Saga, as it is determined by the market, attests to the network effect and to the size of the economy, and allows us to gradually, and when I'm saying us, it's a sort of a royal we, it's the smart contract that does it automatically, to gradually decrease the reliance on the SDR reserve, and therefore to gradually become independent, to gradually become uncorrelated to existing currencies, until eventually we become completely independent, just like Bitcoin is, with a determined supply of money. But this is done in the Saga model at $5 trillion of market cap. And the assumption, which is based on past experiences, is that an economy of this size is already stable enough on its own, stabilized by the fact that the currency is being used to trade, and enjoys a massive support and trust, that it can sustain the volatility because of its own intrinsic elements, and does no longer needs those crutches, if you want, of relying on a different currency. So we start by being 100%. At this point, we are 100% backed by the SDR, and so one would be able to call it a stable coin, but this is something that the protocol is in charge of changing as the economy strengthens.
That's very interesting, and I have to say that it also sounds complicated to so to our audience that is watching. If you didn't understand what we discussed until now, especially the last explanation, obviously you can read about it in length on the Saga website, and I do encourage you to do so, since it is such a game changer. But you asked me before to, so we'll argue a bit. So I'm going to ask you a controversial question. Let's see how you can manage that. So your goal...
I'll do my best.
Your goal is to serve as a global currency, integrated within the current financial system, governed in the interest of its holders, and endowed with the features to become a true store of value and means of exchange. How do you intend to achieve this based on the criticism that Libra has already faced for very similar goals?
So first of all, I think that criticism is good. You know, when we started the Saga, then we brought on board a team of advisors that would be a sort of sounding board to our ideas, and we brought them from the traditional. We're very happy for them to have joined. People like Professor Jacob Frenkel, the previous governor of the Bank of Israel, and Professor Myron Scholz, they weren't constantly in agreement with our models, and I think that this sharpened our model. So first of all, criticism is not bad. It's when it's not a paralyzing criticism, it's a way to improve. But to your question about Libra, I'm not dodging the question. I think that there are several fundamental differences between the projects, although there are several similarities. Obviously, the reliance on the basket, and especially now that Libra has revised its white paper and has decided to rely on the SDR as a basket, here is a similarity. And there are many things that we believe that Libra is doing that are very sensible and at the right directions. At the same time, there are several key differences. The first difference is that we do not control Saga. Saga is controlled by a smart contract, and when the smart contract is not enough to control, it is controlled by the holders of Saga. Just to give you an example, Saga was launched on December 10th, 2019. On December 10th, 2020, there are going to be elections for the board of directors of Saga. And those elections are voted upon by Saga holders, any Saga holder. So it very well may be that on the occasion of the next ANON conference, I won't be the one speaking on behalf of the project. We believe this is essential. Accountability. The fact that all the incentive of the monetary operation is to serve the interest of the currency holder is at the base of what we're trying to do. And I think that without referring to Facebook particularly, the idea that a corporate that answers to its shareholders by design can be the issuer of a currency, well, we believe is an idea that is risky, and it is an idea that clouds the legitimacy of private issuance of money. We don't believe that money should be issued privately. It can be issued non-governmentally, but then it needs a structure to ensure that the currency holders are eventually the sovereigns of the currency. There are many ways of doing it. Bitcoin is one way, ours is another, but the principle stays the same. This is one thing. The second thing is that when you look at the FSB declaration from less than a month ago, and from the European Chamber declaration a few months ago, what really worries them is the fear to financial stability. And here we have a sort of size advantage, just simply because we are small. We are a bottom-up operation. We believe in being a bottom-up operation when it comes to trialing money. We are eventually dealing with the livelihood of people. And people are reticent to change, and rightfully so. We should all be very careful when we're dealing with the livelihood of people. And so when authorities are looking at a corporate that already has a reach of more than 2 billion users, it is looking at it differently than when it looks at a startup who is growing from the bottom up and have to earn the trust of their participants and users. And so I think that those two key differences makes the project very different, and eventually the proof is in the pudding. We are out compliant with regulation, and so and available. I would use this stage to add that we're not available in the United States because of wanting to be fully compliant with regulation. A key condition to it is regulatory clarity. Unfortunately, we are not feeling that the United States regulation currently provides this clarity that would make us comfortable to render Saga available in the States while being compliant, and therefore we are not yet available in the state. I hope that this will change in the future.
Thank you very much for the answer, and it was insightful. I'd like to take the remaining time that we have to allow the audience to ask questions. The first question that we have is from Raymond Molnar. I apologize if I said the name wrong. And the question is, which type of consensus Saga is using?
So when it comes to the smart contract, the smart contract is deployed on Ethereum, and so the mining consensus is an Ethereum one. But when it comes to the governance of Saga, then we've developed our own consensus mechanism and our own voting mechanisms. And I'll just touch on a few points because it's rather complicated. So, for example, as I've mentioned, we're going to have our first elections on December 2020. Up until then, we have no right to change anything on the smart contract. But if after that, when we are elected and there is a monetary committee that is elected and in place, and it wants to introduce a change to the smart contract, then it may do so, but this change is subject to a veto right by all the currency holders, by a majority of the currency holders. So we try to find a balance between the possibility to leverage expertise. We believe that monetary decisions should be expertise-based, but at the same time, this expertise needs to be at the service and needs to be checked and by the sovereigns of the currency, which are the currency holders. So this is a different consensus mechanism. We methodically separate two elements. One is the execution of the protocol, and there the consensus mechanism is the Ethereum consensus mechanism. We are in the process of supporting additional chains, but then we are not interfering with the consensus mechanism of the chain. For the updates of the protocol, we believe that pure blockchain is not enough, and therefore we've developed our own governance framework, which I invite you to read about under the governance tab at saga.org. Just, do I have one more minute on?
Yes, we have one last minute. So if you can say 30 seconds, if you can say final words, and I'm sorry that we're not able to take more questions, but I would like to mention that everyone can connect with Saga today and tomorrow at Saga's booth, and you can ask all the questions that you would like to ask. And I'm sure that Ido and his team will be happy to answer them. You have 20 seconds for final words.
So I think we're living in interesting times, whether it's the Chinese angle of wishing interesting lives. It's going to be hard and it's going to be challenging. I really think that we have an opportunity as the crypto industry to gain attention, from people that are seeking for alternatives, for stability, for trust alternatives. And I think that we also have a huge responsibility to be there to the rendezvous and to act responsibly to be able to fulfill this alternative. I think one message is that I think we are not past the crisis, although we very much want to, and we're not past instability. And I think this year is going to be a very meaningful year for our industry if we are able to serve as part of the cure, of the healing that the market needs so terribly.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone watching and listening, and I hope that you will have a great rest of the day at ANON Summit. And I will pass it on to Shiva. Back to Shiva now.
Thank you very much.